So getting started with the installation, it's probably a good idea to map out where we're going to install the shunt. Because we need to put the negative cables that are the load and the charger on this side of the power, it says power negative, referring to the negative cable power. What we have to do is figure out the cables that we have and where they're going to allow us to place the shunt. My first thought was I wanted to put the shunt down into this lower cavity down here on the battery compartment. The problem is when I go down in that area, these cables, this would be long enough. The charging cable from the Dakota onboard charger will not allow me to get down there. It's just not long enough to make that run down there. I've already tried. What I'm thinking about doing is, this is the factory hold down piece. It's a plastic U-shaped. What I'm going to do is take this base, I'm going to screw it to the outside edge of the U-shaped piece here. I'm going to run the battery cable negative down and around to here and hit that. This charging cable is long enough to go to P negative, so power. And then my other cables from the golf cart are going to be able to hit right here too. Now, should note that the eyelets on your cables typically are going to be 5/16 eyelets, and unfortunately the shunt has a much larger bolt. That means we're going to have to open up these holes on most of the cables. Okay, so I've got the OE factory EasyGo RXV battery hold down hardware out, ready to mount the shunt to it. You're going to use a 17 millimeter socket or box wrench to loosen up these nuts and washers. What I'm going to do is clear the shunt off the plastic tray holder so I can get to the housing and screw it directly in there. So these bolts come out. I've already removed the other one. Anyway, so now I'm looking at the plastic tray holder, the shunt holder, and what I'm going to do is locate it on the back of the factory U-shaped piece here, and then the shunt will live inside there. And then when you put the shunt together, you're going to have, again facing forward, we're going to have the power that goes, or that accepts the charging cable for the batteries and the golf cart negative cables that would lead to the battery on the power. And then we're going to send a brand new cable from the battery, says battery negative, and that's going to go down into the battery terminal. So we're going to clear this off, and I'm going to use a number 10 3/4 self-drilling screw. And whatever you decide to use, I just think it's helpful to use the screw head to take a look at that. I'm going to have enough room on both sides of the holder, and I have to have enough room for that bolt to be there on that side as well. Okay, with the shunt mounted, now would be a good time to connect the power supply line, and you're going to use a jeweler's flat blade screwdriver to back off and loosen these little bolts, these little flatheads, and then you're going to insert the power cable. You can just pick one of the spots, it'll be fine. I don't want to trap this positive cable and squish it, so there is a relief underneath this piece to allow it to live underneath. Okay, I'm going to test the cable run to make sure it's going to be long enough to go from the battery negative to the negative terminal of the battery itself. So I have a large enough eyelet to get over the, I guess it's a 3/8 bolt. Not too sure. Let's just put, I'm not going to go super tight on it. All I want to do is hold the cable, and then I'm probably going to point this cable in the down position and then route it. I'm going to go ahead and use the metric 8 bolts hex head that Dakota sent with, that I actually had to use longer ones. But when I did an install video on the battery, I actually had to use longer ones, but now I'm going back to the Dakotas because I only have this one cable. So if you have more than one cable on the negative, then maybe go back and look at your install, because you're only, for the shunt to operate, it needs all of the charging and load cables on it, and just this one guy here. So I'll tighten this one up. Okay, just for some housekeeping, the cable that's at the battery negative terminal is attached to the shunt at the B negative terminal. We have the Dakota onboard charger negative cable. We have, if I had to guess, just the EasyGo negative cable, another EasyGo negative cable, and I do know this yellow one is the 48 to 12 volt DC converter negative cable. So we have the loads and we have the charging cable, and now we're going to get a little bit of a spark when we put these on, but it should be okay. Just one of the cables is going to spark. So I put the big fat, usually put the largest cable first and then work my way down to the smallest cables. And I'm going to try to make my cables as clean of an install for housekeeping. There's the spark. It don't hurt. And then get this guy on there. And then last is my small cable. And now what I want to do is use my 17 millimeter wrench and start putting these guys back together with the washers on top. The shunt is enabled with all the negative loads and chargers, etc. to here. The last part was the positive line that we installed prior to putting the shunt together on the U-shaped piece. That has a lug at the end of it, and it connects to the positive here to give it power. Now it's time to put the data cable for the shunt display. Going to run it through there. It's going to go underneath the rubber. It's going to move its way under the rubber into this relief, or there's a tunnel here for cables. We're going to separate this dash, which is real simple. Metric 10 nut right there, and then on the other end right there. So there's 3 of those. We're going to use a T30 to remove 1, 2, 3, and then 4 on the driver's side. We're going to use a T40 to remove 1, 2, 3, 4, so that we can lift the the rubber mat. Also too, there's going to be some pop rivets in here. We're just going to take a flat blade screwdriver and pop those up. Do my best to give you a shot of this. The actually hardest part of the installation is repurposing the battery fuel gauge hole that's in the dash. Getting the factory gauge out has been the biggest challenge. Thanks to Matt at Ramona Golf Carts, I called him because I did a search and could not find a video on this, and I've never done this this OE gauge. So according to Matt at Ramona Golf Carts, great guy to call if you ever need help. You depress the wings of the gauge and you push, and I've got one corner out and it came out. So anyway, you can see the hole that's left, and we're going to do our best to repurpose that hole. The cables ran up underneath the dash. Now we're just going to connect the 2 plugs together. We're going to locate the display, stick it in the hole that I opened up, try to get it level. Gonna grab a bracket that goes in the back. This guy. Gonna attach that to the back. It's real simple. Just lays in the back there. It's got a little plastic wing nut. Comes with it, and then just tighten this down. So the charger just terminated, and we are still plugged in with the charger. So that's why we're showing a very high voltage with the charger technically still on but not charging. Now, before I calibrate the meter to 100% state of charge, I want to use an accurate voltage and capacity. So I'm going to unplug the charger. See, the voltage starts to drop, and then you'll see it settle in, and I'm going to use the percent arrow key here to calibrate. I've waited a few seconds, and it looks like the battery has settled in. Let's go ahead and calibrate to 100% state of charge.